I'm going to demonstrate for you how I clean brass parts, particularly delicate items like this float. Happens to be the right carburetor float. I have washed it in the parts washer, hit it with some brake clean or brake cleaner, in the spray can, and that's what it looks like. Now at this point, it can be used the way it is, but if you want to brighten it up and make it look more original, what I use is simply I create a paste out of this product called Barkeeper's Friend, and I've been using this particular canister for probably 15 years. It's just about empty now. What I do is I just make a bit of a slurry or paste out of Barkeeper's Friend. So put a little powder in a container like this plastic container you see here, mix it up and dissolve the powder. This comes out in a powder form like any scouring powder. And then I use two different brushes. I have a soft nylon brush right here, a lot like a toothbrush. And this brush is brass. And I also have a set of fine brushes here, as you can see, that I'll demonstrate how I use those in a moment. But it's really quite simple. I usually start with the nylon brush first because it's softest, and I get a little bit of the compound on the brush and I just start scrubbing like you can see there. There's no great magic to it. The reason I wear gloves isn't so much because the Barkeeper's Friend is going to really hurt you, but it will dry out your skin and you'll end up with very dry hands if you don't wear gloves. And I just scrub it like that. And if you want, you can put a little bit on your fingers. Do the same thing with your fingers. Again, what you're trying to do is just brighten it up a bit. And you can take this as far or as little as you choose. It's really up to you. The primary objective with cleaning the floats is to get all the crud off them and make sure they don't leak, which we'll talk about later about how I test to make sure my floats don't leak. And if you've got any stubborn stains that you want to remove, that's where the brass will come in handy like that. And you can see that this brass brush right here, with a little bit of that slurry or that paste, will help get any staining off of that float body. If you scrub long enough, you can probably get them pristine. It's really up to you whether you want to go that far or not. I don't necessarily want them to look perfect. I want them to be good and clean and to look reasonable. But after all, they are not going to be seen once the bike is together. You do want them to function properly, of course. That's more critical than being nice and pretty. But using a combination of your fingers, rubbing, a brass brush, and a soft nylon type of brush or a toothbrush would work fine. I use this one because the bristles are quite long. And you can just clean this as much or as little as you choose to. Really up to you. I tend to use the brass brush for most of the initial cleaning like you see here. Get most of the stains off. The worst of it. Then I will use the nylon brush to kind of finish up in the crevices where the brass might not be able to get, or it's not flexible enough. You can buy these brushes pretty much any big box hardware store, places that sell welding supplies usually have a good supply of them. They're not hard to find. Of course, you can get them online if you're so inclined. Whenever I see them around, I keep a supply of this kind of item, this kind of a tool. And if I happen to notice I'm getting low, I'll put a note in my note application I keep on my cell phone. I keep an application running, or have an application that I call up and I make shopping lists for parts, tools, whatever. And then if I need to take a photo, I can. And then when I'm out and about doing my thing, hardware stores or wherever, I'll just check my notes. And if I need something, then I'll just pick it up. I don't use paper for notes anymore. I haven't for quite a while. I just use the note application on my phone. And then I'll finish up, like I said, with the nylon. Getting all the crevices and cracks. The Barkeeper's Friend really works really well for this. It'll clean almost any metal. It is slightly abrasive, so just be aware of that. I would not probably try it on something like chrome. I've never used it on fine chrome that's in good condition. I probably wouldn't. If I was to attempt that, it would be in an out-of-the-way place or on a well-used item that I wasn't too concerned about, just to test the effects of it. So use it on highly polished metals like chrome at your own risk, I would say. But for something like this, it's perfect. I think we got the initial cleaning done. The reason I use these little nylon bristle brushes is for that boss right there where the float pin, mounting pin goes through. I just run these through like this a couple of times from both ends to make sure that there's no contamination built up in there or crud. Let me go over to the sink and I'll rinse this clean and I'll be right back. So I spent about probably all of 20 seconds rinsing this in my sink under hot water. And you can see, I think, how it came out. It looks really good. I could have spent a little more time on it. Probably getting that off if I wanted to. But it's clean and it looks good. So what I'll do next with both floats, and I will I'll do a little video on that, is I will test them to make sure that they don't leak before I go any further with them. I'll move on now to testing of the floats to see if they leak or have holes in them. Right float on the right, left float on the left. Little plastic container full of clean water. This is cool water taken right out of the tap. Taking the float, I'm just going to immerse it in the water, and what I'm going to look for is bubbles, and to make sure that it floats. The first thing I'm going to do to see if there's any evidence of bubbles, and there isn't so far, and we'll see if it floats. Now I did shake the floats before I really did anything to listen for fluid or gasoline. Didn't hear anything, but these floats are so old that any fluid or fuel that might have gotten into them may have dried by now, so just shaking them may not necessarily tell the tale. But that float seems to be just fine and is floating, as you can see, the way I would expect it to. So I believe the right float is okay. Do the same thing with the left float. Just going to force it under water and hold it for a few seconds to see if there's any evidence of it blowing bubbles. There's no obvious damage to either one of them. And I don't see any air escaping. So I'm confident that both of these floats are okay. If I had a defective brass float to show you one that leaks, I would demonstrate that for you, but I don't. Usually if I have a brass float that I can't repair, and I have soldered floats and salvaged them, but usually if it's bad enough that I can't solder it and use it and repair it, I don't keep it around, I dispose of it. So I don't have any floats right now that are compromised and leak to demonstrate, unfortunately. But that's all there is to testing for a float. I'll let these dry off now, obviously, and we'll continue on with the carburetor work.